Go.
Go. Okay. All right. Says we're live now. All right. Good evening, anybody who is here with us tonight. We are Star Trek, and we are launching what we hope to be a fun and exciting talking about Star Trek from 1966 to 2005. There is a ton of stuff we're going to be able to dissect for a long time, and our goal is to have fun and bring a positive light back to Star Trek. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then my panel will introduce them. My name, Nobody Geek, and why do I love Star Trek? For me, Star Trek was 1986. I was about 5 years old. Started watching TNG when it came on TV. Was really enjoying it. It was one of my first Star Trek experiences. Little did I know how much of a science fiction fan my grandmother was. And turned out my grandmother had all 79 VHS tapes of classic Star Trek. So, in between each week of watching TNG, I'm down there in the basement, Ambassador's heard that one many a times, watching classic episodes of Star Trek. And I have been a huge fan of Star Trek ever since. It is actually one of the primary reasons I became an IT technician. So it was a big influence and is still a big influence on my life. So that is my short intro into my love of Star Trek. Ambassador.
Well, as for me, Star Trek has always been something that's been a part of my life in one way or another. I do not identify as a Trekkie by any stretch, but my introduction to Star Trek was actually with TNG and the Next Generation. And I eventually went back and I did watch the original series. I did grow up watching the original series movies. Loved those to death. I love the original crew movies. 2, 3, and 4, and everything are some of my all-time favorite movies of the sci-fi genre. I did watch Deep Space Nine off and on. I didn't get a chance to watch it all the way through to the end, but I watched Voyager, and by and large, I did enjoy that. And I'm not what you, as I said, I'm not what you would call a die-hard Star Trek fan, but I do have an appreciation for it. I do enjoy it for what it is and everything. I've even got a father-in-law who is a huge Trekkie. Him and my wife and everything, when she was growing up, they would watch Star Trek together and everything when she was a kid. And we were able to connect on that level. So, hold on one second.
And with that, we'll go to Chef Zilla.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And here is Mir. Awesome. Welcome.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Okay. So Mir, what we're doing right now is we just actually started. You are not behind. I've already given my introduction. Ambassador's given his. Chef was about to give his, and then right after that, we'll run right into yours.
All right, sounds good.
So I'm Chef Zilla. Star Trek has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. I remember at probably 3 or 4 years old, my parents going to sneak into a TV to watch Space 1999. So sci-fi and Trek have been in my life forever. First episode I ever remember watching was Shore Leave, and that was I think that was summer camp. I remember watching Shore Leave and watching the White Rabbit running around and Kurt fighting Riley. And I have watched every episode of original series at least 3 times a piece. I watched first run TNG from the minute it premiered. I have seen every one of the movies big screen first release. It brought a tear to my eye watching the Constitution refit in Space Dock, from the Jerry Goldsmith theme to watching her pull out to meet up with V'Ger. Tears were rolling down this 7-year-old's face at that point. At 10 years old, it was Rathacon, and then Khan. from there, it took its thing. Gulf War veteran. One of the reasons I joined the military was because of Trek. Now, granted, I became a tanker. I served on an Abrams, but my last tank was named Enterprise, and that was when I got out of the service.
Nice.
All right, I guess I better go, huh?
That's
Yeah,
you,
go
Mayor.
for it. Okay,
All right.
Mayor, it's all you, buddy.
All right, so as you know, I'm Mir. Star Trek has been like one of the most important things in my life. This was my father and I never bonded on very much in life, but we bonded on Star Trek. This would be like our Saturday morning ritual. There'd be the morning cartoons with the Super Friends and all that other deal, and then right at 12 o'clock, that's when Star Trek would come on, and my father would think it was sacrilege to watch Star Trek on anything but a black and white TV.
Star Trek in color.
Seriously, it's like Star Trek Noir. It was fantastic. And so we had this really tiny, maybe 10-inch television that my father bought back in like 1968. And we would sit there next to this TV and watch the whole thing. And at the very end, my favorite part, you're talking everything. I didn't even know Star Trek was in color until Wrath of Khan came out. And so, on Saturday afternoons, once it was done, we had this TV, you would shut it off, and the thing would just whine. It would just do this like really odd screech. And, so the Electrocon would just fire this little white dot right in the middle of the screen. It would just stay there until the thing stopped screeching. It was fantastic.
Kind of like the Outer Limits.
Pretty much.
Oh, man. I
I've watched
the Outer Limits.
Star Trek movies are all, of course, the original motion picture series is still my favorite series. Between Next Gen's great and everything, but yeah, you just can't really beat the other one. I've watched every episode of Next Gen. I'm still, even now during this whole quarantine thing, I've been watching all the series all over again. I finally got into DS9 this week. Yeah, I'm in the middle of DS9 right now. I got into season 3 earlier. Just anything Trek, I will grab in a heartbeat. And also just this week, I just purchased my very own 1/350 scale model Polar Lights Enterprise 1701, not 1701A. And a friend of mine is going to try to put the damage from Wrath of Khan on the sides of the ship, just to make it that much more authentic.
Nice.
When it's done, I will display it with all of its glory.
Yeah,
I want pictures.
You should. Yeah, I want pictures.
I want pictures.
It's going right over here. It's going to be right here behind me.
You see above my shoulder over here?
Absolutely, I'm loving it.
Mir, remind me later. I don't think I follow you on Twitter and everything, but I am on the Discord. I'll send you pictures of some of my vintage Star Wars stuff and everything, and some of my models. It's all my models. So
yeah, I don't know, Mir, if you've seen I don't know if you've seen my Eagle Gloss collection, but I'm really getting proud of that. And I got a V'ger. That was V'ger and Deep Space K7 were really two of the prizes I've gotten recently.
Yeah.
I'm actually especially. Oh yeah, next I'm like, I want the Doomsday Machine. I
man,
so want that is going to be like my crown jewel.
I've got a fun story about that and everything. It's from a TNG novel that I read back when I was in junior high. Anything I'll tell later. Anything when I'm talking about Picard.
Yeah.
So.
Let's give a shout out. Kathy Starr is here, or is it Kathia? If I screw up a name, somebody slap me.
It. Jesse, say it with me. Kathia.
Kathia. I don't have my glasses on. I'm sorry, buddy.
Well, put your glasses on.
All right. I think that's. There we go.
Now, was that so hard? Was that so difficult?
Oh, vanity, man! I can see the vanity there.
Okay, so
hey, try him to wear these things 24/7 anytime you're awake.
Oh, man.
then come talk to me.
I tell you what, when I started,
Yeah, right over here.
I used
I
to
don't
play
have
Warhammer
to, but I
40K,
do.
and when I was first started painting miniatures, not a problem, nothing. Now it's like, okay, I need my reading glasses, got my magnifier. Oh,
Yeah.
And to the chat, sit room, you're not late.
Yeah,
The
I
sit
was
room
gonna
is never
say,
late.
you-
The sit room is never late, nor is it
oh, sit
early.
room
It,
comes in
it arrives
exactly
precisely
when
when it needs
needs
to.
to.
Needs
Amen.
to.
So, I say let's go ahead. We've got our introductions done. Let's get into our captains, and I am super actually thrilled that we all picked we all independently had a different captain. I'm like, that was awesome. You know. So, in just going in the order of who had it, Chef, I believe you had Captain Kirk, Ambassador Picard. I have Cisco, and Mir has Archer. So, Chef, you're the lead on this one.
Well, technically, shouldn't Merritt be the lead
Technically, if we're doing
Archer came before
chronologically,
Kirk.
Yeah, by 100 years, 150 years.
Do we want to go canonical?
I will gladly go canonical.
Actually, technically, it would be.
Hey, Mir. Okay. The council has spoken. The panel has spoken. Mir, you go first.
And I just lost this up.
Okay,
Man,
so
Kosh is doing it to us now already.
Archer,
We'll
I love.
blame it on Stone Loki.
I have always been here. Been here to annoy you poor pathetic mortals.
Okay.
With your corporeal bodies. Go ahead, Mayor. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead,
So
Mayor.
Archer, I'm gonna lay the preface this with saying, of all the Star Trek series, I'm gonna say that Enterprise was the first. Season 2 and 3 of Enterprise were probably my least favorite of anything ever, except for what has come out recently. That being said, I love that the series Enterprise mixed together so much Star Trek and so much NASA and just meshed it all together, and it was just fantastic. Now, Archer is one of my favorite characters because, for one, he's allowed to have a dog in space.
For those.
You know, and of all of the captains there, this guy was here first. This was the guy who said, "Hey, Vulcans, F you. I'm going to go explore the galaxy." You know,
I did
I'm
love
sorry.
that he would do that.
He
Would do that.
He had some serious balls to do that kind of stuff. So after telling them that, like, we're going to be, we're just going to have you right here. We're going to be like, let's just have you sit here and just not doing anything for 100 years. And all of a sudden it's like, no, this is our time. We gotta go. And it was just amazing how he could take the situation where he had no idea what the hell was going on and just try to make the best of it and still try to uphold the truest ideals of Earth, even when he's going forward into that situation. And of course, again, this is all pre-Prime Directive. So
Exactly.
there was nothing there for him to fall back on other than the morality that he grew up in.
And remember, he even points out there are no rules right now. Somebody's going to make them someday, but until they do.
That's exactly it. I mean, he was in basically a giant space demolition derby. There are no rules. Blow somebody up or else, or try to talk them out. And, he had the guts to take two future allies who were enemies against each other and bring them together. You have the Andorians and the Vulcans working together. And while he had the Vulcans that were our allies for 100 years before, he wasn't afraid to say, no, this is wrong. When they found the the spy station in the monastery.
Well, you could actually even argue that Vulcans weren't necessarily helping us.
No, they had an active interest in keeping
they
us,
were pushing
holding us back.
They were holding us back, and even with them holding us back,
Yeah, and I think that without Archer there just to take the reins, they would have gone and held us back in perpetuity.
Now, I don't mean to say anything political, but let's just take that example right there, and that actually is a very fitting scenario of what humans are in a certain climate. We're only going to take so much from somebody else before we're like, nope, I'm done. Damn the consequences. I'm out of here. Yeah. And, like I said, if you look at our current climate now, that is actually very relatable right now.
We're getting up to that breaking point, depending on where you are.
Well, exactly. I mean, as Americans, we're the country founded by the people that said, I don't want to play your rules anymore. We want to play ours. And I think that's kind of something we've lost a little bit. We need that sense of adventure and danger. And I think when, not to step on your time, Mir, but when we were looking at the space program and the shuttle, and it's like, where are we going now? We don't seem to be going anywhere, and it's frustrating because we're explorers.
Yes,
we're curious, we're inquisitive, we want to know.
However, take a look at what SpaceX did with the was it the Falcon Heavy? Oh my God, that's incredible.
what I thought was interesting. I'm sorry, Mir, but what I thought was really interesting was my one of my old bosses. His name was a master sergeant. And he knew I was big into science fiction and stuff. Actually, my captain and I. Sorry, I heard something in the background there. My captain and I would talk regularly about Star Trek religiously. It was interesting. My my sergeant not so much, but he was big into who's the guy who owns the big hybrid company?
Oh, you're talking Musk?
Elon Musk.
Tesla owns Tesla.
Yeah. And he was, I don't know if this was related to Tesla or not, so don't quote me, but he was talking about how they were trying to get a rocket to go up and then come back down and reuse it. And he had me watch he had it live on his computer and asked me if I want to come watch it. And I'm like, you want me to watch a rocket land on a platform? Yeah. Let me go grab my drink. And, I watch it and it's a little choppy and everything. And I don't actually see the thing, slowly land like you'd like. But I saw the clip where it went from it's not there to it's landed.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy hell.
Yep. Seeing it from the position of the rockets in particular, that is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I mean, that's straight out of Star Trek for us.
Yeah. And you're talking about the guy who pioneered, for lack of a better term, pioneers for all the captains to come after.
Yep. Yeah. He's the one that's pioneering the Federation.
He set the tone. He really did. And that's one thing. That's one thing I'll give Bakula and Archer is you see that throughout the series. It's like,
yes,
we're setting the tone for whoever is going to be following us.
Exactly.
And you can see that line from Archer to Kirk to Picard to Sisko, Janeway. You can see how that is set.
And you can see that it's the ideals of the Federation, but also like the morals of the individual, like how they train their captains. Like you need to have this set of morals with you when you're going to command.
And I think that's one of the great things that we see, especially with the earlier ones. And even Picard addresses this when he says, do you remember when we were all explorers?
Yeah.
In Archer and in Archer, they're building the subspace relays. He had no communication with Starfleet. Kirk, they were so far away from anything. His decisions were his decisions. Yeah, if it
I
had
like
not,
what Kathy Starr says here. The Vulcans held us to their standards, not
Yeah.
our standards.
Yes.
yeah,
And that's like, okay, we don't hold ourselves to the world standards as Americans. We like our standards,
Mhm.
you know. And if you try to come in and tell us, you can do that in any state. I mean, I'm a
Mhm.
Midwesterner. I know some of you guys are actually. I think most of us are all relatively close geography wise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think you're like
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
state away from me.
Yeah.
Indiana.
And
So, yeah.
but
Tennessee.
you think about it, if we went to California, you go to a part of California, it's a different culture. But if you go northern
Yeah.
California, southern California,
That's
it's
a different culture too.
culture.
yeah.
Exactly. And nobody likes it. I mean, there was a big thing about whether you were NorCal or SoCal back in California. I'm like, I'm an Illinoisan, man. I'm Midwestern. I got no beef here. I got no beef.
Mhm.
I got no beef, man. Don't joker me. But yeah, nobody wants to be held to somebody else's standards. We want to
No.
be held to our standards.
Yes.
We want to
Yes.
rise and fall by our successes and failures, not somebody else's.
And that's the thing. Ultimately, and Archer made this point. It's like we want to make these mistakes, you know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because there are mistakes to make, and we want to learn. We want to learn from those mistakes. You know, we had a saying in the Army: "You don't learn from winning." So,
No.
you know,
Well,
we would
and-
do it. We train and get our butts kicked. We learned how not to get our butts kicked.
I
Yeah.
think it was it Billy Joel, one of my favorite musical artists, saying that your mistakes are the only thing that you can truly call your own.
Exactly.
Well, and
Well put.
if I'll interject something here in the episode Q Who, where Q launches or throws the Enterprise into the Delta Quadrant, right smack dab into an encounter with the Borg,
Yep.
Yep.
and Picard says, "Do you want me to admit we're not prepared? Okay, I concede that. Do you want me to say I need you, Q? Well, right now, Q, I need you." And you know, Guinan's trying to tell Picard, y'all ought to turn back now. Y'all ought to head back to where you came from because
Yep.
this is not a pleasant sector or quadrant of the galaxy. This
Yep.
is a very hostile quadrant of the galaxy. So,
Which we
you know,
find out in Voyager.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
yes, the Delta Quadrant is very much a frontier-esque type of quadrant and everything. I mean, yeah, you've got one.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't count the Hirogen or the Hunters and everything as a major power. The major power of the Delta Quadrant is the Borg.
Yeah.
Period.
Without a doubt.
Oh, and
Full stop.
Oh yeah, no, but you know, Ambassador, you bring up a great point there. That's interesting. You know, I never thought of the Delta Quadrant as a frontier, but okay, the Alpha Quadrant is predominantly. We have all the major factions.
Mhm.
Beta Quadrant has Romulan and Federation, and maybe some Klingon, but don't quote me on that one. I haven't seen a map in
Yeah.
forever.
I think the Breen's out that way too. if I
Yeah,
remember
Breen are
correctly.
out
Yeah.
that way.
The Breen are in the Delta Quadrant. I would have liked to have seen
No,
what they looked
I
like
think-
outside that. No,
I think no. I
they
think
were
the
in the Beta
Breen.
Quadrant.
Breen's in beta, I believe.
yeah,
Yeah.
Beta,
Oh, who
Breen's in
knows?
Beta
You know,
Quadrant.
it's semantics at this point.
I
Somebody, so we'll memory alpha it later. We'll figure it out later.
Okay.
Okay. But then, you know, the Gamma Quadrant is the Dominion for the most part.
yeah.
Until they get
so,
their
you
butts
know,
whipped.
yeah, but then you point out the fact that, yeah, you're right. The Delta Quadrant really was the wild frontier. I'm now going to have an interesting perspective as I get through season 3 of Voyager right now is where I'm at
Mhm.
because I never made
Yep.
that connection. So,
Well,
Mir, did you have any more you wanted to add to Captain Archer before we get sidetracked
Well,
too
I mean,
far?
all I can tell you is that he is the one who made your guys' career possible. So, props. You know. And of course, the guy got to visit the 29th century. You can't knock that either.
That is true. I will give him that. Oh, I like that, Ambassador. I like that. I like that. All right. Well, with
Nice.
that, Chef Zilla,
So
you had Captain Kirk, so please.
yeah, Kirk is my man. Like I said, I grew up with the original series. I grew up with the movies. I kind of based my leadership style off of Kirk. But on the same token, it's kind of hard to talk about Kirk without talking about his other halves, and that's Spock and McCoy. Between Spock, who was his logic and brain, and McCoy, who was his emotion and his id, he always had the best from them.
Yes.
I think a lot of people make the misconception that Kirk was the go in guns blazing, don't think about it until you're already there in trouble. But he knew who he could rely on. And he knew that with words of advice, both from Jiminy, and that would be, Spock, and Devil, that would be Bones, he knew where he could go. But even going back to his academy days, when we're talking about his belief in a no-win situation, I don't believe in a no-win situation. One of the best books I ever read was Kobayashi Maru, and they actually talk about how every one of the bridge officers dealt with the Kobayashi Maru. And we learned that, Kirk actually programmed it so that when he hailed the Klingons, they responded to him as, "You're that Captain Kirk?
Yeah.
How can we help you?" And immediately sent all the instructors and evaluators into a tissy fit. But he was commendated and reprimanded at the same time. But I mean, if that right there doesn't scream volumes for Kirk's career, then I don't know what else was. But whereas Archer set the tone for the captains to follow, Kirk is the example of who that lone captain in the middle of the experience, how he is. When you see him, when they get to Iosha, and it's a planet full of gangsters from the 20th century, to the Doomsday Machine, and he's watching his hero, Matt Decker, suffering, a broken man who just watched his crew and his ship destroyed, to
my favorite freaking TOS episode.
Oh, yeah, the Doomsday Machine is incredible. It's an awesome story.
But unfortunately, you have a little bit of a continuity break.
Not as bad as
Look,
some.
it is what it is.
I know.
Hey, we can have fun with the nitpicking when we get there. I'll tell you that. I have we can fairly nitpick anything.
But I really think Kirk, the stereotypical Captain Kirk, comes from the movies, from where we see him in motion picture to the end of his career in Undiscovered Country. That's the stereotypical Kirk. His missions during the 5 years, his first run on the Enterprise, they're great episodes. They're awesome. But where we really learn who Kirk is in the movies. When you go from when you go from dealing with V'ger to dealing with the sins of his past with Khan, to losing his best friend in search of Spock.
And I really think that the movies were really all about character development for all of these people.
They were all character driven.
But original Trek
that was their strength. That was their movie strength, and that was the weakness of the TNG movies.
Yeah,
I agree.
I
will take it. Let's take. I can never remember number 5's name. I'm having a total. I'm getting old.
Final Frontier.
Final Frontier. I will take the scenes of Spock, McCoy, and Kirk at Yosemite over anything in Star Trek. When
I actually
when
like those scenes. I thought they were good scenes.
Yeah.
They're character building.
Yeah,
we
Spock
never
talking about marshmallows. Yeah, it showed who these guys really were, and
it fit with their personalities.
It really did. And then once we get into Undiscovered Country, and we're looking at like the end of the Cold War here in real life, we're looking at the end of the Cold War and the reason that Kirk has been who he is. And you're looking at, well, where are we going to go from here? I mean,
Exactly.
we've always been enemies with the Klingons.
Yep.
How do we not be enemies with the Klingons?
Yep. And then there's that choice of, do we keep up being the old guard and, or do we adapt to the change and ride off into the sunset?
And his last line, second star to the right and straight on till morning.
And the chemistry between him and Christopher Plummer was
epic.
Give me Chang.
I don't mean to play Mr. Know-It-All, but I did just recently review this movie on my channel. And here's a fun fact. I don't know if anybody knew this or anything. I don't remember if I found it out myself or somebody shared it. No, somebody else had shared it. Shatner and Plummer actually worked together as in a theater company up in Canada at the very beginning of their career. So they had known each other early on. So this was an opportunity for them to reconnect and everything and work on a project again. And I loved the dynamic between Kirk and Chang. I thought it was does it have the long line or the long history of Kirk versus Khan? No, it doesn't. But it's still a very good hero villain.
Oh yeah.
Protagonist.
I would put I'll let you finish, and then I just want to interject one thing, Ambassador.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a very good antagonist protagonist type of struggle back and forth and everything, because Chang is he's militaristic, but he's operatic. He has a sense for theater, and that's this is one of the few times that you see a Klingon up until we get into TNG and everything that has very much an artistic soul, in a manner of speaking.
Oh yeah,
and that's one of the really compelling things about Chang. This is why he has become somewhat of an icon within Star Trek lore and everything, because he is a very memorable villain, and he does stick with you, much like Khan does, and everything.
And one of the reasons that Undiscovered Country is one of my favorites is we're starting to see the Klingons as the warrior poets. Not just big, brutish, smashing your head in with a batleth. We're starting to see, we're starting to see culture and humor within the Klingons. Yes. I think honestly,
I'll give you a little idea on what I think of Klingons here. That's what I think of Klingons.
But when you've got,
I would say this, Chef, though. I would put the intensity of Shatner and Plummer with Ricardo Montalban and I cannot think of his name, but go all the way back to the first time we met the Romulans.
Mark Leonard.
The guy who played
Balance of
Mark
Terror.
Leonard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Mark Leonard, who also played.
Those three protagonist antagonist mixtures were epic for not just the tension that was there, but that even though you can take it different ways. In Wrath of Khan, he didn't actually ever physically see Khan. As far as I'm concerned, he didn't have to.
No.
And I actually like it better that way. He doesn't even, when it comes to the first time he encounters a Romulan, the only time they get to talk is at the very end. But you don't even need to talk. Everything is said in those few moments that they talk. When he says, "This is not our way," and he's like, "What's the point?" And there's that little subtle moment, Chef, you probably remember this, where he's about to say something when he's like, "No, I'm not going to." He looks like he's going to say something. He's like, "Nope, I don't know your culture, but I respect it."
Yeah.
And that was the huge thing. And because each one of our those three antagonists are really very three-dimensional characters, even though they're only seen for relatively short time.
And
there's so much in those characters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And with Chang, when he's talking about you can't appreciate Shakespeare unless you hear it in your native Klingon.
The original Klingon.
Kirk had a lot of great dynamics. And William Shatner, I do not think gets the credit for his acting skills he deserves, because you got to understand, believe it or not, the first time I actually saw William Shatner act was not in Star Trek.
For instance, in Twilight Zone.
Yes, I was about to say, can anybody guess when I saw?
Yeah.
Do you know I saw both
There's
episodes.
something on the wing. Wing.
Sponsor.
Yeah, but he was in 2 episodes. Some people forget he was in 2 episodes.
He
No, I
was.
knew that.
Episode
But
where
he's-
there was something with the music box. I forgot how it was. It's been a while since I watched, but it was earlier on. It was actually his first time doing a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, he's
I know he's more famous for the Gremlins one, but yeah, he was in 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, and if you look at it, DeForest Kelly and Leonard Nimoy, Mark Leonard were all in Twilight Zones and Outer Limits.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
It talks, it feels, it's human.
And so, yeah, so that's Kirk for me. You know, right,
All right.
I've got my Kirk. I've got my Kirk action figure. My absolute favorite is him as a gangster. You know, we'll talk about a piece of the action.
Oh my goodness, I want to see that photo later. I got to see a photo of that. I'd never seen Kirk figure in the gangster uniform.
Oh,
That I got to see. That's going to become a background on my phone.
oh man, it's awesome. And you know, it just as a side note, and then Kosh, you can talk Picard. Spock and Kirk in that car, learning how to use a clutch and a manual transmission is classic. It's one of
worth
the
its weight in gold right there. Gold press
really
platinum.
Yeah, they had. You could tell they had a lot of fun doing that episode.
Yeah. Ambassador, please take it away. Give us your Picard.
Well, as you can tell by my avatar, I have an appreciation because you all had Kirk. I had Picard. I had the more sophisticated captain in a matter of speaking. And everything, because I
sorry, that was the cigar. That wasn't how I feel about Picard.
hey, now I didn't throw shade at Kirk. Don't throw shade at Picard.
Yeah,
Look,
save that.
all right.
We'll save that for later. Chef, we'll save that for later.
I show James Tiberius Kirk the respect that he is doing. He is doing a lot, but so is Jean-Luc Picard. So, but you know, I remember watching the as I mentioned previously, I remember watching TNG as a kid in elementary school, going all the way through high school and everything. And this was my Star Trek, and I loved it. And I loved the original. I love all the other shows, minus the new ones, which I refuse to pay to watch and everything. But for me, Picard, he wasn't the rock'em sock'em captain. He was the more of the intellectual, which I can appreciate. Anybody can throw a punch. It takes a much sharper mind to be able to figure your way out through sheer intellect. And that's what Picard was in a lot of ways. He was the intellectual of the captains. I'm not saying that Janeway wasn't smart. She was very, very smart. She was very sharp. She was very on her game, and she had to be, and everything. Because she was the first time we saw a female captain. And I think sometimes she gets kind of lost in the shuffle. I liked Janeway as a captain and everything, and that's just my 2 cents on her. I mean, there's more, but I want to focus on Picard because that's the captain I picked. But what you get with Picard is you very much see an evolution of his character throughout the entire 7 seasons of TNG. And he goes through some heavy stuff. I mean, he goes through, just off the top of my head, he goes through being assimilated by the Borg. He goes through that interrogation by the Cardassian officer played by David Warner.
Man. Yep.
Oh, God,
He
what an
goes,
episode.
he goes through that on again, off again relationship with Crusher. He has to deal with the fact that he had to bring Jack Crusher's body back home to Beverly and Wesley. He's trying to relate to I think he, in some ways, he was trying to be a pseudo father figure for Wesley. But the problem for Picard was he very much felt that he wasn't a family man. He was like, being a starship captain means that you can't be a family man. And we do get that parallel with Sisko, because Sisko was a family man, even though he was a widower. He had Jake and everything. He had his son. He was trying to balance being a father and being an officer, and particularly a wartime officer in a lot of ways. Because if you consider the fact that he was the big figurehead for the Federation, and Mary speaking, in the war with the Dominion. But for Picard, his was a journey of self-discovery and change and growth, and I think that was something that a lot of people, particularly my age, could relate to, because I was going in from my adolescence into my teens. And if you were a geek or a nerd in the late 80s and going into the 90s, Picard in a lot of ways was, yeah, try that on me. I was bigger than most geeks. I could throw a punch better than most of the bullies could.
I could run faster.
But anyway, but the thing was with Picard, he went through so much and everything through the entire series. And I know some people find Q annoying. Me, I loved John Delancey as Q. He was one of my favorite characters. Any episode that had Q was a highlight episode for me, because you always had that back and forth between Q and Picard.
Oh, Tapestry.
That banter was incredible.
Yeah, that was a great episode. And I love, I know some people. Go ahead.
Oh, I love it when he takes Picard back in time.
Yeah. Tapestry.
Himself.
John Love Pickard.
Yes, and he lets him reflect, and it's like, I want to thank you, and Riker's like, why he put you through hell, and then it's realized it's like, we all kind of can relate to that aspect of that life. It's like, yes. Is there things we'd like to go back and change? But if I go back and pull that one little fabric, I'll give you a perfect example. My wife and I sometimes used to talk about, what we thought life would have been like if we hadn't married our exes, because our first marriages were god-awful misery. But I said, we wouldn't be the people we are if we hadn't gone through that. So you can, it's very relatable. So there's a lot in there. I'm sorry, Ambassador, but yeah, there's things that I want to point out, anything that can be relatable. I mean, there's so much relatable about every character in it. We're just grabbing captains tonight.
Yeah. Well, and if you really think about it, Picard's strength was not him being a fist fighter or anything like that. It was very much the fact that he was an intellectual. He was trying to figure out a logical and a rational solution to a situation, but he resorted to, for lack of a better word, violence when he had to. And for me, that was the thing that was very compelling about Picard, was the fact that he was growing and changing, and this was an older man, but he was still growing. He was still learning. He was still evolving as a human being. And he was an image of I'll put it this way. He was a image of the 24th century man, or the 24th century human, who was very much intellectual, who wanted to try and understand things rather than just shoot at them. And, I love, there's that one episode when he's on the planet with the alien captain who's played by Paul Winfield, and all the other race does is talk in
Darmok.
In what?
Darmok and Tanagra.
Yeah, that episode is so freaking it's so freaking quotable. And Picard finally figures out what the other captain's trying to say, and then Picard goes back into his own history, into his own education, into ancient history of Earth, and recites part of the Epic of Gilgamesh, for crying out loud. And think about it, that is one of our oldest surviving myths in a lot of ways. It's one of the oldest written pieces of literature that we have in ancient cuneiform, for crying out loud. And a man from the 24th century pulls this and uses it as a means to bridge a gap between an alien race and himself. And Picard is always thinking, he's always analyzing, he's trying to stay one step ahead of his adversary. And he always tries to have an ace up his sleeve if he has to, particularly in a couple of episodes where he's dealing with the Romulans. And I remember one in particular where he's outmatched 2-1 and everything. It's the Enterprise versus 2 of the newer model Romulan Warbirds.
The Derridex class.
The D Derridex class. And he's like, Mr. Worf, send the signal, and you see, I think, 2 or 3 birds of prey and everything decloak, and he's like, we may die,
but you're coming with me.
But I'm willing to.
If the cause is just as honorable, they're prepared to give their lives. Are you prepared to die, Tomalak? And Ambassador, since you are doing reviews on the Ambassador, Tomalak, that guy.
Oh, that guy.
Well,
Andreas
Katsulas. Yeah, I remember. I remember Andreas Katsulas was also G'Kar and Tomalak. Yeah, yep. I remember.
Yeah, I knew you did. I'm just saying it's a great, it was a great, dynamic between them. They had a fun kind of chemistry between each other.
Yeah,
and it was just adversarial with each other. It was just fun.
Well, and one of my other episodes that's very memorable for me with Picard is The Chase, where he's trying to complete his old professors, his old archaeology professors' mission to find this ancient code or whatever, and they end up on this little backwater world, and they're able to put together this whole sequence of DNA, proteins, or whatever, and it unlocks a message from this ancient, super ancient race and everything that predates pretty much everybody. And you see,
it definitely was not a recipe for making biscuits.
No, it wasn't.
But it did go in the crisper. So there you go.
Yeah, I think the one thing that really kind of bugged me about Picard, and forgive me for this, was he was so aloof, so standoffish. When you see how close all the other captains are with their crew, and it takes all 7 seasons for Picard to finally show up to play poker with his crew, and he's sitting there and he's going, man, it's like it dawns on him all the time he's wasted by kind of maintaining that Horatio Hornblower, Captain Ahab, I am the captain, and there's got to be that separation.
Well, really, you see the same thing in TOS too. I mean, you'll have like Kirk and Spock and McCoy, but everybody else, there is a separation there.
Well, you have a separation of command, but in your off-duty hours, and I know Jesse will agree with me on this. I mean, in the Air Force, everybody's on a first-name basis anyway.
Hey, I'm going to tell you this, man. That 4 years of the Marine Corps, I never got comfortable with anybody above the rank of captain.
Oh yeah.
Every time I had a field grade officer, I did not when they couldn't figure out why I was always talking to them at parade rest. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out why I was standing up all the time.
But that scene, and it's the last scene in All Good Things.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the best scenes in all of Next Generation. We get that.
I think it's a great completion of his arc from the beginning to the end.
I completely agree.
Well, and that was the great thing about the beginning and the end of Next Generation. It started with Q, it ended with Q.
Yep.
Yeah,
and and then of course you had all the episodes with Q in between and everything. And sometimes he was very sinister, sometimes he was more jovial and everything. But the thing for Q and everything that I realized as the series went on, and I was actually able to sit down and watch the episodes chronologically. he was always trying to push Picard to break out of his box.
Yeah.
He was trying to get Picard to think to quote Wrath of Khan, to think in 3 dimensions. He was trying to get Picard to think in 4 or maybe even 5 dimensions.
Well, really, he just wanted to push him out of his comfort zone to help him grow.
Yes. Well, and that was the great thing.
I couldn't tell if Q was trying to be the angel on the shoulder, the devil on the shoulder, or both.
He was an anti-hero.
I would say for Q, I think he was trying to be a bit of both.
Yeah.
I really do. I would say he was trying to be a bit of both because, I referred back to this a few minutes ago with Q Who. And him and Q and Guinan are having this conversation. It's almost like Picard's not even there, in a manner of speaking, even though he's there in the same room with him. And Q's like, they're advancing farther and faster, much further than they should. And Guinan's like, yeah, but their capacity and their ability to grow and change and adapt is one of their greatest strengths. Mm-hmm. And Q's like, okay, click. Let's just see how good you are, Captain. The hull is rented. The band is set. Now it's time to see if you can dance. And Picard realizes he's got 2 left feet. And that's the great thing about Picard. He realizes, I think, when Picard went through his Kobayashi Maru, because I guarantee you he probably did, he finally learned the lesson that Kirk couldn't. You can't cheat your way out of everything. You have to admit that there is a no-win situation. And I think, honestly, that particular episode was a fully crystallized example of the Kobayashi Maru scenario for Picard and for the crew of the Enterprise D in total. Because
think about it, they lost crew members too because of that.
They lost crew members. The ship got badly damaged. They were on the brink of being overtaken by that Borg ship, and Picard is like, okay, I make you, I need you. We're ill-equipped right now. But
I just wish I wish there was an explanation. And Ambassador, if you know it, there's 2 things I wish I had an explanation on. One, I would always love to know, how the heck did Guinan recognize that Q? I mean, I don't know I'm only assuming it was because he was in that form when Guinan's people would have saw him, but I'm just not sure I'm buying that. And the only other thing is, I really wish there had been some dialogue in the series on what Picard was doing between the Stargazer and the Enterprise D.
I think there actually is a couple of novels that were written and everything that do fill in that gap for Picard. As far as Guinan and Q, I don't know if there is any novels that were written. But that does bring me to the one novel I brought up a few minutes ago when I was doing my introduction. There's a book and everything. It was a TNG book. It came out, I think, in the late 80s or early 90s, called Vendetta. And it ties Doomsday Machines into TNG and with the Borg.
Yeah,
now,
this was the one where
fact.
This was the one that Borg put her hand outside the window and it got chopped off or something. It was I think it happened in 10 Forward or something like that.
I never read the books.
Not that I recall.
I'm pretty sure I read
it. But
yeah, this is something involving how if the Doomsday Machine had kept on going, it would have gone straight into Borg space to try to take them out.
Yeah, essentially, because the thing is, the race, I forget the name of the race and everything that built the Doomsday Machines.
Was that actually
they built these machines because the Borg had infiltrated their space, and in the book it might have been, but I don't remember exactly. Now, Vendetta actually takes place after the episodes of Best of Both Worlds, because there's a quote and everything from an admiral or somebody who says, Picard beat these SOBs, why can't we? And what have you. But the thing is, the Doomsday Machines were meant as a ultimate weapon to destroy Borg. That's why they were designed the way they were. They had that impenetrable hull that Borg weaponry couldn't penetrate. And not only that, these ships were designed to quite literally eat worlds or eat ships to keep going. So basically, anything that the Borg threw at a Doomsday Machine was just energy for it to keep going.
Yep.
And you find out that there's a command center and everything on each one of these ships.
Mark the Infinity Desire, take care tonight. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, Mark, good to see you, bud. You take care. But what essentially happens is Picard encounters a Doomsday Machine. Well, the Enterprise does, and for some reason, I think it's like an AI or something like that that's in control of this particular Doomsday Machine, realizes that they have a mutual adversary in the terms of the Borg, and Picard tries to reason with the AI and everything and tell it, look, you're walking into a seemingly impossible mission here, going into Borg space. But the AI is hardwired, in a manner of speaking, to resist any type of dissuasion from its mission.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard's trying so desperately to get the AI to not go, because there's so much that they can potentially learn from this machine because it is so old. They could learn a lot from the race and everything, because the AI has, I think, if I remember correctly, you're going to have to forgive me, this is a book I read 30-some years ago.
Yeah, I think I read it in
But
like
this
92.
AI has access to all the files, all the knowledge. That sounds about right, because that's when I was in junior high, and that's when I read Vendetta.
Same deal. Yeah.
And the ship has the collective knowledge of that race. And they're trying to get it to not go into Borg space, but ultimately they lose control of it and everything. Picard is the link is severed and everything, and it just goes off. And the last few chapters, or the last chapter or so, I forget the exact dialogue, but you very much get the impression that the Doomsday Machine has made into Borg space, and it is just mowing a swath through Borg space. It is just chewing up planets and ships and just going.
Yeah. And if I remember,
damn, that would have been a cool episode.
It was a really good book. If I remember correctly,
Yes.
I think they were saying that it was like anti-proton beams or something was extremely weak to the Borg. I think maybe.
Yeah, but here's the thing: those Doomsday Machines, they fire a heavy proton beam of some sort, or something, or anti-proton or something along those lines.
And it just cuts through the Borg ships like butter. It does.
Yeah, it does. It just absolutely cuts right through a Borg ship like it's nothing. It basically just vaporizes it, in essence. But the thing that was interesting about that novel is because this is right, like I said, this is after the events of Best of Both Worlds and everything, when Picard is assimilated. And that's why the AI connects to Picard, because he still is trying to come to terms with his experience with the Borg. And the fact that he was assimilated, that he caused so much life to be lost and so much destruction for the Federation as a whole. And that's why the AI reaches out to him and says, you were on the same path as me. You have this vendetta against the Borg. Join me. But Picard is trying to say, look, no, that I'm trying to move past this. I'm trying to get over this. And the road you're going down is going to eventually lead to your destruction, the loss of all the knowledge that you contain. And that's a great moment for Picard. I mean, yeah, the episode Family is very, very good, because this is immediately after his whole experience with the Borg, when he goes back to his family home. And
that is one of the best Picard
I love that episode.
Yeah,
that was one of the best.
Yeah,
I don't know who the
Yeah.
actor was who played his brother, but man, that was just
I don't recall
epic.
it. I don't recall it myself, but you know what? I love the resolution in that episode. Him and his
Mhm.
brother, they get into this knockdown, drag out fight, and Picard breaks down. And he has a very vulnerable moment. And honestly, that for me was a much more relatable moment and everything in a lot of ways than in some ways what I had seen with Kirk. Again, I'm not disparaging Kirk to any degree. He is one of my favorite captains, very much is. But to see Picard in the aftermath of his experience with the Borg is he's tired emotionally, he's tired physically, and he's gone home to try and lick his wounds in a manner of speaking, and his brother's right there giving him 3 different types of grief and everything. And he's trying to be a good uncle to his nephew and everything. And I love the moments with his nephew and with his brother and his sister-in-law. That whole dynamic there is very, very interesting. And Picard even has this opportunity from an old friend or anything from the academy to go work on Earth.
Underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, to work on building a new subcontinent or whatever, or a new underwater colony on Earth or whatever it is. But ultimately, Picard's like, nope, I'm going back.
Yeah.
I'm going back out into the stars. That's where I'm meant to be.
It was also that line, like after Picard breaks down, where the brother tells him, like, "So you are human after all." You know, this is the first time you ever see the guy break down. Like something finally gets to him.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And that for me is, I think, is a very powerful and a very relatable moment for a lot of people, honestly.
Absolutely, because that's kind of what he needed too. Because he had this, he just had this horribly traumatic experience, and then, finally he breaks down. It's like, oh my god, he can finally let his emotions out, and and he's not being prevented from doing so, or having his arm chopped off, or having an eye taken out.
And it's another example of a show being ahead of its time, because you got to remember, back in that time frame, there wasn't really a whole lot going on for the military to take out of in 1986. But now you look at it, from 9/11 on. Okay, and I'm going to bring this up when I finally get to Cisco, but there's certain things I'm going to bring up that are very relatable, and that's very relatable. The PTSD. When my wife, when my wife got in it now, I served 20 years. I never deployed to a combat zone at any point in those 20 years. I was never at a position where they wanted to send me. My Marine unit never went out. And to try to explain to you how Air Force deploys people is about as convoluted, and it would take too damn long. And you just eventually tell me to shut up. That's how messed up that is. But when my wife had to go to Afghanistan for an entire year, she stayed behind the wire the whole time, but my wife worked medical. She saw the bombs come in. She heard them. She had to woke up in the middle of the night to run to a damn bunker. She saw casualties come in. I mean, she told me things about, she said the biggest thing that was killing her was seeing the dogs come in.
Yeah.
The canines that were coming in. And we got back, and I'm just going to point out, she got back, and we were living in Florida. I had moved up here to South Carolina. She got back, and for some stupid reason, this damn car just kept following us and following us and following us. And my wife was starting to panic. She was starting to get a panic attack. And I said, I'm pulling into the gas station. I said, if they pull in past us, I said, I'm jumping the gun and we're getting the hell out of here. They pulled in, I jumped the gun and went like crazy because I was not going back home yet. But those kind of things, there are such things that can be triggered. It can be a big event, small event. Chef knows what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
it can be the most innocuous thing.
Yeah. I thought they made a great point of that off subject. I thought they made a great point of that with Falcon doing VA PTSDs when the girl said, there was a box or a bag in the road and they thought it was an IED. Hey, my wife would get nervous about that kind of stuff in the road. And she never even went in one of those convoys, but she saw what happened afterwards.
Yeah.
So PTSD, I mean, that's why I was saying it was very ahead of its time in the context of when it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've said my piece and everything is I'll make one final comment if you want to move on to Captain Sisko.
Sure.
Picard in the movies, he was honestly the strongest part of the movies. And I mean,
I would agree.
His relationship with Data, I think, was that interpersonal relationship with Data was the strongest part of the Next Generation movies.
Yeah.
In particular with Nemesis and everything. So I am sad that they didn't get a chance to do more Next Generation movies, but at the same time, there just wasn't that same dynamic and everything that you had with the TOS movies and everything. Because I made this point the other night on my Undiscovered Country review. The TOS crew, the actors, and everything, they transferred very well from the small screen to the big screen, and the stories, I think, in the writing were much more relatable. First Contact was good, don't get me wrong. Everything is by far my favorite of the TNG movies and everything. Not for the simple fact that it was the Borg, but just the fact that it was once again Picard having to face his demons. It was a bit of world building, which I can appreciate. I love stories that tell any bit of world building, whether it's big or small and everything. And the first warp flight and everything is a piece of history we didn't have in TNG up until First Contact, or in Star Trek period up until First Contact. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I love that particular movie. And Stewart brought Picard to life. He owned the character much like he owned Xavier and everything from the X-Men movies. And
you couldn't have picked a better actor.
No, they couldn't have. No. Because Stewart was able to make Picard relatable, yet something that was attainable for the person of the 21st century. You can study your butt off and become as eloquent and articulate, as intelligent as Jean-Luc Picard can be. And that, for me, is why Picard is so compelling and so interesting as one of the captains in the Star Trek universe. So,
all right,
Jesse, I yield the floor.
All right, so the captain I picked was Sisko, and here's actually some context to why it only happened after I just recently binge watched all of it. Now, yeah, I used to have the argument of, the Kirk Picard argument was always there, and I had my likes and, purposes, and I generally went with Picard. Picard, for the most part, a lot of times, probably just because it ticked my grandmother off so bad. And I had to have one little something to pick on her about. But when I didn't get to watch all of DS9 all the way through when it first came out, or Voyager, or Enterprise. DS9, I think it was just I forgot the years it came out, but I was entering high school. I was in high school and everything, so I was chasing girls and all kinds of stuff. So
getting
92 to 99.
Yeah, last season was 98-99.
Yep. So yeah, I was in high school. That's why I was missing it, because I was too busy doing other things. And Voyager and Enterprise ended up on what was it? It's no longer
UPN.
Around. Yeah, UPN, and they're now defunct.
Yep.
And where I lived at the time after I joined the military, did not get UPN. Nowhere I got UPN. I never could find a cable package that had UPN, so I didn't watch any of those for a very long time. And then I bought all the DVDs, and I did watch them all. So I've seen every single episode of every single series, but I did that about 12, 13 years ago.
Hmm.
So I was in my mid to late 20s going through a very rough time in my life. I was going through all kinds of crazy stuff. And then I just recently, after all this started, I said, you know what? I'm going to start watching Star Trek again. So I started with TNG. I still love it. But then I got to Deep Space Nine, and this is where 40-year-old me, same with TNG, 40-year-old me had a very different view of TNG episodes as a young person, as now being 40.
Yeah.
And everything with DS9 was so much more relatable to me, especially as a military guy who did 20 years.
Yeah.
Cisco is the most relatable captain for me because one, he was married, had a child while he was in the military. He lost his wife in combat. Okay, now I got divorced, but I ended up raising our daughter because my ex really didn't do shit. So I had to raise my daughter until I got remarried, just like Captain Cisco did. And then had he survived at the end, or technically he did when he comes back from his time with the Prophets, I think that's what's going to happen. He's going to now be with Cassidy. His son's older, but then he's got his other child, and he's going to be part of a blended family. Same with me, as I got married to, and he got married to a freighter captain. I got married to somebody else in the military. So there was a lot of relatable interactions. And then you have the more casual interaction with some of the junior officers and the senior enlisted.
Yeah.
That was very common. Then you have us dealing with civilians because we had to deal with contractors. And I hated that a lot more than I ever did.
Dealing with the civvies.
Oh, I actually asked my boss. I actually, at a commander's call one time, I voiced the question. I said, excuse me, sir, I have a big issue here. I said, I've been trained how to deal with enlisted personnel. I've been trained how to deal with other government personnel. I have never been trained on how I'm supposed to manage, lead, and handle contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And I just brought that straight up to their face. But I just, yeah, there was so much more relatable there. The after hours activities between the military, unwinding the way they did,
Yeah.
those kind of interactions. Not everybody being, and I mean, on a space station, and that was actually more relatable to me too, because I was at a station. I was only rarely ever on a ship. I was only on a ship twice in my career. So, you know, being on a station, seeing everybody on a regular basis, interacting with, and then you have the other military people there. You got the Bajorans. Eventually you get the Klingons, and that's an inner, you know, I've worked in joint units. I've worked with, you know, Army, Navy, Brits, French, you know, and they are so different in their military. My wife worked with the Brits. I've worked with the Brits. So there was so much more relatable. And Cisco was the kind of captain who I said, and I made this very clear. I said, if you, oh, no shit. Okay. One of the great things I saw was, and I said I was going to review this eventually, is In the Pale Moonlight. And when I watched that episode, the whole episode is basically him breaking the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to convince us. He is trying to convince us that he is okay with what he's doing. Basically, he's trying to tell us, I'm okay with what I did. You need to be okay with it. Because you have to think, one of the biggest things is, okay, you don't just call Starfleet Command and say, yeah, I want to do something that's going to bring the Romulans into our war. And if it backfires, we could now have another enemy on the other hand. Okay, you don't just call Starfleet and they sign off on that. That's got to go to the Federation Council. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's got to get in America.
Or you
got to get the president's signature.
Or you take the clandestine approach and do it through other governments. You know?
Oh, yeah. Or you go that way.
Fake.
Which is what they tried to do, which was awesome. And it was morally ambiguous. Now,
Yep.
I said after I watched that episode, I said, if the roles had been reversed and it had been Cisco and not Picard when the time had been assimilated, and if he had been the one to have to deal with the moral, ethical dilemma of sending Hugh back with the virus, I think Cisco would have sent him back with the virus. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is right
Oh,
or
yeah.
wrong. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not going to say who is right or wrong. That's a debate we can have forever. I'm just saying he would have been the one to do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think for a second he would have cared one way, shape, or form, because
No.
he's also more relatable to me because he has a temper. Also,
Yes.
he will correct. I love, one of the best scenes when Bashir shows up and just starts berating Ducat on the view screen.
Oh yeah.
And then Julian looks at him and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So he goes, "Oh, that was the highlight of my day. Don't let it happen again."
Yeah.
And then he talks, or like when he talks to Major Kira, and he's like, "Go over my head again, and I'll have yours, on a platter." He's that kind of leader that I just recognize the most. That's the kind of crap my sergeant, if I had screwed up in front of my sergeant or said something stupid, which I did do a few times, they would pull my ass aside and they would lecture my ass big time for what I just screwed up. And trust me, paperwork did mean crap. Nobody cared about paperwork. But when you got that verbal lecture was way worse than any stupid write-up, because all you did was write it up, blah, 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 It was gone. You never gave it a second thought. But you remember those verbals.
The one thing that I loved about Cisco, and he even outshines the other captains this way, is he is such a presence.
Yes.
Yeah,
When it comes to the other captains, Picard, he has that air, but he's on that bridge. When it comes to Cisco, it's all him. I don't care who else is playing, what else is going on around him. He has got such a presence that it dominates all the other characters.
And you don't call him Captain Pimp-Hand for nothing.
No, no. And, there was a really interesting interview with Terry, Jadzia Dax. She felt so uncomfortable with Avery Brooks, Cisco, referring to her as old man. And she said in this interview she would go to her trailer in tears because, she thought she was being denigrated, that she was being, insulted. Avery Brooks came to her, sat down, and said, "No, I know Dax as a man. He was an advisor and a friend of mine. I referred to him as the old man then. As far as I'm concerned, you're still the old man." And it was like you could almost see the difference in their dynamic from when Jadzia and him were first together versus later on in the series. And
what I loved, what I absolutely loved was that eulogy he gave for Jadzia, and it was him and her.
Yeah.
It was just him and her, and all he's doing is he's like, "You said my relationship with you wouldn't be different from Curzon. You were wrong. Curzon was my mentor. He was this and that, but he's like, you were my friend. I'm gonna miss you." And I'm like, literally, I'm 40 freaking years old. I will be the first one to tell you. Somebody asked what made me cry, what movies make me cry. I flat out said, okay, the two movies I cry the most at if I ever see them, Old Yeller and Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna go with Where the Red Fern Grows and Rocky 2. Those are my two right there.
But I will just say this. I think Cisco was robbed. The way his arc ended with him with the prophets in the Celestial Temple, I so wanted to see him in his house in Bajor with Cassidy. If anybody earned that right, it was him.
Yes,
I agree.
But Jadzia getting killed and the way Jadzia was killed, I still to this day it kills me. I so wanted Worf and Jadzia and that whole storyline to play out. That was such an awesome
It's unfortunate
story.
Terry Fellow didn't want to come back.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
I respect the guy, but after that, I've always just wanted deck Marcolemo for that. You
Oh, I know.
I've never
know.
forgiven him to this day.
and
It's
Ducat
like
was,
nobody forgives Malcolm McDowell for killing Kirk.
and Ducat was he was such an awesome villain. But if I ever, I want to throat punch him so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, no, not Jadzia, no. And
You could have killed Worf, and we'd have been fine with it. But not Jadzia.
I'm going to argue that
understand.
one. Come on.
But one of my biggest things that I found enjoyable in DS9, and unfortunately, it really did not get the attention it really deserved, and that was more of the father-son dynamic between Jake and his father.
Yeah,
I
I would agree with
there
that.
was that episode. I actually was on. I was on a Facebook. I was on one of my Star Trek Facebooks, and I was talking about DS9. And I got to that episode of the Bajoran solar sail, which I just recently acquired from Eagle Gloss because I really wanted it. And what is it? If I'm saying it wrong, it doesn't matter. I'm paid. They're getting my money. But
No, I just said you're a show off.
Maybe a little bit. But the dynamic between that father-son interaction was just, to me, unbelievably beautiful, and one of the best I had ever seen in Star Trek. And somebody pointed out, you're not going to see too many more of those, but we did get a few. And then we had the episode where Jake is on the planet with the medical teams.
Yeah.
And he's a war correspondent. And, now he's getting a taste of what I kind of wanted Geraldo Rivera to maybe get a little bit of when he almost gave away the location of a unit. Yeah, I'm not letting that one go. I'm never forgiving. I'm never forgiving. I don't care what a nice guy is. I'm never forgiving Geraldo Rivera for that crap ever. There's no forgiveness for me.
The one thing I've got to give DS9 is it was not only did we finally get to see the Federation at war, but DS9 was family. The whole show was, between Sisko and Jake, Sisko and his father, the way Sisko treated the crew of his team, it was the family dynamic throughout the whole thing. You had Bashir and O'Brien as the goofy brothers off doing their little thing, but it's the best example of family. And when they all rally around Nog after
oh my god,
and you see how they all come together. Everyone, including Worf, who would look at somebody acting that way as dishonorable, but they all come together to help Nog. And it's such, we'll talk about this when we cover that, but that is such a powerful statement that no matter what we go through, no matter what we do, we are going to back each other. We're going to love each other. We may walk over each other and do stupid stuff occasionally, but ultimately it's the family. And I'm going to do, and in Sisko, I'm going to fight whatever I need to fight for my family. And, that's why Sisko is he's a really close second to Kirk. It was, that's a hard thing to get over for me.
I think that when you bring up Nog, I'm sorry, hold on a second. I think when you bring up the thing about Nog, especially after what happened to him, he obviously feels an amazing amount of responsibility because he's the one who sponsored him. He's the one who pushed Nog. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you a shot. Okay, and now he's like, all right, I've given you. He gave him his carrot, and now he's getting the stick.
Yeah.
Because this is how Sisko is.
Yeah.
Sisko will maybe start with the stick and give you the carrot, but if you get the carrot first, be afraid because the stick is about to come out.
The stick is coming. Yeah.
And when he is berating him, he is insulting Nog. He's like, I don't think your people have. Where's the greed? Where's the profit? I don't care. I don't think you're trustworthy. Why do you want this? Why? And he is so emotional. And he's like, once he gets it out of him, he's like, he just does this. All right. And it's just he can do that for the fact that he has that temper.
Yeah.
The way he's able to, and I mean, he doesn't do it always, but the way he's able to balance that temper out, because he has to use his temper more than anybody else, because he has more internal problems on his station than a Starfleet captain's going to have, or even somebody on a starbase is going to have.
Yeah,
on a Starfleet starbase.
Sisko's like he's like a volcano. If you ever actually see a dormant volcano, it still exudes power and menace. And that's Avery Brooks and that's Sisko. You're just sitting there waiting for him to erupt.
I'm gonna end my discussion on Sisko on this note. The episode I became a big fan of his was when they got sent back in time, and they're in basically the frickin' Project Ghettos, and Bashir is. Are we really that different from the Romulans, from the Klingons? If we were pushed, would we revert back to this? And he was like, I don't know. But as a Starfleet officer, it's my duty to make sure it never happens. And something about that saying right there just clicked. I said everything about what Starfleet is was encapsulated. Everything about being a Starfleet officer was encapsulated in those words right there.
Yep.
And I will end with my discussion, my view on Sisko on that.
So, with that in mind, from the very beginning of the DS9 series, the writers were letting us know that Sisko was essentially the anti-Picard. You know,
but he wasn't.
This is the guy that's going to go. That he will be very emotional. He's going to be like, you know, his passions will govern a lot of his actions, just like what happened during, you know, the whole deal with the Maquis. That entire story arc with I can't remember what the captain friend of his was, and also with the security guard guy.
Betrayed your uniform?
Yeah,
I think was the title of it.
Yeah,
and he made things very personal. He made things very emotionally involved, where Picard would kind of keep that emotional distance unless he absolutely had to come to that. So
Picard would never have held that vendetta against that security officer.
No,
Sisko wouldn't let it go.
No, but in the middle of doing like the very first episode when the two captains met, they were saying, okay, this is going to be a very, very different captain than the one that you've been used to.
Yes. Well, and you know, I appreciated Sisko for who and what he was, because he was very hard nosed. He was very, very edgy, and I think this is something that some people may have forgotten and anything, because we're talking about mid to late 1980s. Avery Brooks was actually on a drama and everything. Huh?
Wasn't it like Heart to Heart or something like that?
No.
I can't remember the name.
The show was called Spencer for Hire, and he played the main character. The main actor was Robert Urich, I think was his name. And Avery Brooks's character played like a what's the word I want to use here? Kind of like a muscle. And everything. He was like a tough and everything, or something like that. Yeah, heavy. Thank you, Chef. That's where I was thinking of. Yeah, he was very much a heavy and everything. And his character, the character's name, I think, was Hawk or something.
Well, because he had the spin-off series, A Man Called Hawk, right after that.
Yeah,
he did, didn't he? And then he went right into Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
And if you didn't know, the whole reason that he had to shave his head, the reason why he had to grow hair and shave his beard off, was because they didn't want people to think of him as that character.
Hawk. Yeah, they didn't want to see Hawk.
So when season 3 came around and you see him with his little goatee, he just got a little bit more control over his character. And then finally he was able to shave his head off, shave all his hair off and go back to that. But he understood why they didn't want him to do it. And then as they got to understand the character, as we grew with the character, he's like, okay, I can take a little liberty with my character now.
Yes.
And I think he really owned that character.
He really
I
did.
think he owned that character like every actor owned their captain, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. He was just excellent.
Well, guys, we've been going for almost an hour and a half. Do you want to go into Janeway and Pike, or do we want to save that for another time?
I'm going to nominate that we save it for another time, but I would like to ask
second.
a question out of each one of you. Of the 4 captains that we mentioned today, who is the worst captain and why? And then at the end of this, I will tell you why my captain is the worst.
Can I start?
Absolutely.
So I cannot stand Janeway. Janeway is my least favorite captain.
Okay.
She was so all over the map with her decisions and how she held on to.
I was going to bring that up.
how she enforced the Prime Directive and how she held others accountable. Perfect example is Ransom and the Equinox.
Mm-hmm.
When push came to shove, her whole holier than thou attitude, like, how dare you do this, when all Ransom's trying to do is save his crew and get his people home, just like Janeway.
It's just how far are you willing to push it?
How, you know,
man, my thing with Janeway was always Tuvix. I never was able to. I still have. I'm on season 3, and I just cannot. I cannot resolve the morality of doing what she did.
And that's another one. That's that. But I use how she treated Ransom during the Equinox. As my thing. If
That's
she were
another one, it didn't have to end. Tuvix didn't have to end that way. You could just put him in a transporter and then beam another copy of him in there, like it happened with what was it, Dr.
Riker.
Pulaski during TNG.
Well, it happened with Riker too.
Yeah.
But you got the younger Riker and everything that was stuck in the transport beam from TNG.
That would have been great, and you'd have had a great new character.
So I'm saying, print out another copy of him and then have the other 2. You're perfect.
So,
all right.
so
we know who Chefs is. What about you, Ambassador?
Least favorite captain? That honestly is a hard one, because there is a lot about all of them that I do appreciate, that I do like. If you were going just off of inconsistency with the character, specifically in terms of the writing for the particular series, I'd have to say Archer.
Blasphemy.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that, Mir. But, you know, I've had the opportunity to watch Enterprise in hindsight, and just Archer seemed very inconsistent in how he behaved and everything. And I think that was partly due to the weakness of the script that Scott Bakula had at his disposal. An actor can only do so much with what they're given and everything. And I think his portrayal of Archer was hampered quite significantly by the writing. Whereas,
sorry, I just to kind of add on to that.
sure,
The funny thing about Archer, it was like every time he spoke was a monologue.
Yeah.
It was like a 5-minute speech about whatever. And I love Scott Bakula. Quantum Leap is one of the greatest series ever. But I was like,
a terrible ending.
Why are you pontificating?
We're not going to go there.
Why, Archer? Why do you have to pontificate when you're only talking about making a course change to Rigel's 3? You know, it's like each time he got up there, it was a 5-minute monologue. So there's my 2.
And I'm sitting there hearing Monty Python in the background going, "Get on with it!
Get on with it!"
If I'm gonna say honestly, who would have been my least favorite captain, I'm gonna get very, very, very bad reviews on that one, I'm sure, when I say it. But I'm gonna say, and I'm only gonna say it with a caveat, Kirk, and I only mean TOS Kirk. I just felt his character really, really, really grew the best in the movies.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody
You
had to
killed
go
the
there.
ambassador.
I was going for just because I saw the
Yeah,
expression
me
on Godzilla's face. I'm like, do you see the look on his face?
I think he might jump through.
Godzilla is not pleased.
I think he might go stab me. Okay, all I'm saying is this is just when I want to think solely on character growth.
Yeah.
over the entire
I agree.
expansion of the character of any of the characters. I just feel like his didn't get as much during TOS than he did in the movies. In the movies, he got phenomenal character growth.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. He got good character growth, I think, in the show. But if I want to go based on just TV series, he got the least amount of character growth, in my opinion. That's why I'm saying least. And understand, TOS is the last series I'm going to watch in my binge because it is Captain Cisco may be my favorite captain, but TOS still has my favorite episodes.
Yep.
Hands down. So that's all I'm saying there about him. It's just I felt he didn't get enough character. I understand the time and everything. I just wish, maybe if they had gotten a few more seasons, we could have got more growth out of it. And I'm going to end it with that.
We should have gotten the full 5-year mission. They should have given Star Trek the next 2 seasons. I totally agree.
Lucille Ball only had so much power.
Yeah.
So my second place is definitely Janeway, just because there's just the way that she operated that ship kind of messed it up. But my first place is Archer, and there's only one reason and one reason only, is because of all the captains that are out there through movies, through TV series, through any of the reading material. None of your engineers ever grew a third nipple.
TMI.
Archer threw down, man.
I forgot all about that.
Too much information.
Okay.
Oh no!
All right, with it. All right, I think we'll end it on that. If you guys have, please, everybody, it's been great. Let's, we'll come back. We'll do this again next week. I believe we are talking about Federation starships.
Oh.
Yeah.
I am a starship.
I want to do.
So,
I want to do. Yeah. What do you think? Federation Star Wars.
Which era?
What's that?
Are we talking favorite ships, or are we specific?
Favorite Federation ship, any era. All 66 to 05 is on the table.
Dibs on the dash.
You do not have to pick. You do not have to pick one favorite. But if I'm gonna pick my favorite, it's the Excelsior class.
You know what? I'm gonna call you on that. The Akira class is by far. I mean, if we're not talking Constitution or refit, the Akira class, the Thunderchild is my ship, baby.
All right.
Well, I'm going full on Reliant because.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because look, that's the workhorse of Starfleet.
NCC,
we are the truckers.
NCC 1864.
Amen to that.
Miranda class.
All right, Ambassador, what do you got for next week? What ship are you gonna start us off with?
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to side with Mir on this one, but I think my very close second. I'm gonna have to go small.
What? Sorry, bless me.
I'm gonna have to go with small yet fierce, the Defiant.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Excellent.
Oh,
literally
okay.
what I said.
That is little. All right.
I didn't catch it through the sneeze.
That's my space manatee.
Okay.
So yeah, next week we're going to talk about Federation starships, all eras, all types. I know we can have a blast with that. I want to thank everyone in the chat who showed up. If you guys, I know some of y'all have your own channels. Please plug away.
Well, you can find me on YouTube at The Ambassador. You can find me on Twitter at the thing that underneath my face. I also have started a Discord and everything. If anyone is interested in joining, send me a DM on Twitter or on Discord if you're on Discord yourself, and come join the fun. It's a small community, but it is growing. And as far as my channel goes, tomorrow night, with the Wednesday edition of Ambassadorial Wing, we're going to be reviewing one of the greats of the 1980s, Excalibur.
Ooh, yeah.
And then
I've never seen it. I'm going to watch it tomorrow in preparation for your show.
Oh, you've never seen it? Oh, you are in
No.
for such a treat.
It's such
Oh,
a great movie.
man.
You call yourself a geek. Hang your head in shame. Hang
Shame.
your head in shame.
Shame. Shame.
I'm about to say,
Shame.
Someone's
Shame.
getting close
Shame.
to impaling Geek's head on the spike.
Shame.
Yeah. First he calls
Okay.
out Kirk, and now he hasn't seen Excalibur. Man.
I
Hand me
will
your
make
key
up
card,
that.
sir.
And then
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna go grab some beer after this. I'm gonna pop Excalibur in afterwards, or I'm gonna go find it. I'll figure one or the other out. If I can't find it online somewhere, I got a video store right up the road.
There you go.
And
All
then, and then one more thing. This Saturday night, Ambassadorial Wing, we're covering 3 great entries from the DCEU. We're talking about Aquaman, Shazam, and Joker.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh.
Both of those will be at 7:30 Central Time. So be sure and tune in for that. Make sure, for those of you that catch this on replay, sub to this guy. He is a good friend of my channel. He is a good egg all around and everything. A little bit scrambled, like most of us, but sub to this guy. He's
How
enough.
do I do that? There you go. Sub to this guy too. Sub
No.
to this guy.
No. You sub to him first, and then sub to
him.
him.
Then sub to you.
Then him.
There you go. Got it.
So, but anyway, that's
Right.
all I've got for my. That's my 2 plugs for my channel. So I don't know if anybody else has a channel. If you do,
I'm Chef Zilla. My channel is Fiddler's Green, where I talk about beer, geekdom, and vets. Veteran-centric geek stuff. I
may not be a veteran, but that sounds interesting to me.
Oh yeah, so I need to get
Expect
a little more active
subscribe
on it.
really soon. Expect
But-
a sub from me very soon.
He
He had me at beer. He had me at beer.
So next thing I'm going to be doing, I've got a video on Godzilla I'm putting together, and I think I'm going to tackle my first battle breakdown here very soon. I think I want to talk about Two Towers and the pluses and minuses of the defense of Helm's Deep. So check me out, Fiddler's Green. I'm ChefZilla72 on Twitter. Come say hi.
And as for me, I'm keeping an awful light internet footprint right now, as I'm currently in school after 25 years.
Welcome. Yeah, great.
And they're done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just hang me now,
Hey,
guys.
man,
Hang me now.
respect, man, respect.
But you can find me on Twitter at TheMirror77. And that's all I got. And
All right,
if anything, I'm also a massive PC gamer. So I do stream games every so often, and just having some fun with Fallout 4 right now.
I just
Alright.
reinstalled my original Dawn of War. So I've been playing Apocalypse mod for my Soulstorm. Burn the heretics. Yeah.
I got to get my good computer up and running. I'm running my my experimental computer, the one I do all my testing on before I actually put anything on the other computer or my server. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck with this one right now until I go get it fixed. Unfortunately, I don't have the equipment to fix the port. So I got to take it in. It's always funny when I got to go into an IT store and tell them exactly what to fix, and then they come right back and tell me the exact same thing I just told them.
As it turns out, I'm actually a PC repair tech, so you're not too far away from me. So I'll have to keep in touch on this one.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk online off.
Guys, I had a blast tonight with you guys.
Absolutely.
It's been a ton of fun. If you guys don't mind just hanging on real quick offline, I just want to get a little forewarned. If you all got a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right.
I got
After that, everybody who showed up, thank you. If you enjoyed this, please shoot us a like. Let us know. And I'm gonna not screw it up this time. Ambassador, to everybody out there, the ambassador, everybody, peace and long life.
All right. Live long.
Live long,
Live long.
and prosper.
Y'all have a good night. All right.